Welcome. This class is called Supine is Fine, which means we're going to be practicing the whole time lying on the back. And it can help to have some props. I've got a strap here and then also a yoga block. You could use a big book. Remember the thesauruses and dictionaries. For yoga strap, you could use a belt, but just some options. So without further ado, begin lying on your back. You may have to set yourself up in a specific way. For instance, I don't fully fit on this standard yoga mat. I'm 7 feet tall. Here, lying on your back, join your legs together, zip them up, and push your heels down into the floor. And just by pressing your heels down, you create a little bit more of a charge to your legs. On your next inhale, pull your left knee in and hold the top of your shin. And just notice how far you can pull in, whether you want to pull in for maximum stretch or just come to a place that's relaxing. For the most part, supine positions are relaxing. This is a great practice to do right before bed. However, you can still make them fairly active, and it just is a combination of awareness and putting that awareness into your body. Okay, and then switch legs. Extend your left leg long and then pull your right knee in. Just adjusting the microphone there. And breathe deeply. Let your body relax here, especially on this first one. It's not too strenuous. Okay, progressing further, in a way this is actually just a Supta Padangusthasana preparation, so continuing that. Lower your right foot flat and join it with the left as well. Now, similar setup as bridge. We'll do bridge later on, but instead just extend your left leg up into the air and hold the back of your thigh. This is where you are welcome to use a strap if you'd like. Just showing the example here, I loop up my foot. In terms of placement of the strap on the foot, I like to go to the balls of the feet, so that it's considered where your toes connect to the foot itself as a good place to pull down. But I do know other modalities that go center of the foot, more arch, and then it can make quite a lot of sense to go to the heel, because then you can pull directly down to the knee and then to the hip to plug your thigh bone into your hip socket. So just a few different options. So if you're using the strap, pull down, and then at the same time push your foot up into the strap. You can do the same action if you're just holding the back of your thigh by literally pulling your thigh bone down into your hip socket and then just pushing your foot up towards the ceiling, or if you're practicing outside, sky. And then it's simple, it's just holding the position. If you're using the strap, you can do a switch in the air, which is a little bit easier. So just bring your right foot up, strap up the foot, and then lower your left foot down. One tool I do is I even make a loop into one end. You can see my right hand looped up. It's just a little bit easier to hook in, which means I don't even have to use the fingers on that hand. From here, pull your thigh down into your hip socket and push your foot up. I'm a big believer of having your low back slightly lifted in these positions. Just that's the anatomical neutral position of the low back. It's especially true if you have a regular upper back, which does have kyphosis, a rounded position. And also if you have butt muscles, glutes, then it's likely that your low back will be lifted a little bit. But it makes a difference in the stretch quality. Okay, same, but different. Just go back to the first side. So either loop up your left or hold the back of your thigh. The difference here is now extend your other leg straight on the floor. And you might start with a little bit of a bend to the lifted leg first. Work your lower leg as straight as possible, pushing the thigh down to the floor, pushing your heel down to the floor. Bring your left knee over your hip, and then from there, push your leg straighter. And I just say straighter because this is quite an intense position for me. And I mentioned that these supine positions are meant to be relaxing, but they can be quite intense too, especially if you're less flexible, and you can end up increasing your flexibility quite a bit through this practice. If you're more flexible and you're seeking flexibility further, you can always bend the knee in closer and then work your legs straighter so your foot goes more and more over your head. Just like many of my jokes. And switch legs. Loop up the right, and then bend your knee so that you can slide the left leg straight first, power down through your heel, keep the right knee a little bit bent, and then push your leg straighter from there. Lift your chin, push the back of your head down, again holding the strap, and you can literally pull down and then push up. Oh. And this is a really great practice to do in the morning as well, or even before you do a practice like a power yoga class, just to stretch out the body beforehand. Just a different type of warm-up or cross-training. Okay, back to the first side. So strapping up the left. It could be also that you just hold your left knee on this one. It can help first to use your right knee bent and your foot flat to just move your hips a little bit to the left. And then I'm going to switch the hold of the strap and just hold with the right hand exclusively. From there, moving the leg over to the side and then extending the right leg straight. So adding a twist, you can look to the left high and then pull on the strap, push with your foot. I'm in a spot where the wall is convenient. I could actually push my foot against the wall if I wanted. And there's ways to do this where you actually keep your left butt down and you just cross over as much as you can while keeping both cheeks to the floor, and it really isolates it to the IT band, the outer thigh. If you go further, then you add the twist component, which is symbolically twisting your organs to detoxify yourself. Okay, and then come up, and you'll probably have to bend your right knee to shift your hips back, and then just switch the loop. So now you're holding in your left hand, and again, it can help to move the hips just a little bit to the right, extend your left leg straighter, and then move your foot off to the left. This is still keeping the hips down. Oh, that's so intense. If it's not intense enough, you can always bend your knee and then push your leg straighter towards the head side and then go further over. Again, if it's intense, just move your foot more towards the feet side of your mat. That makes sense. Head side, feet side. And then you pause, hold, and breathe. Ah. Woo-hoo-hoo. Very underrated practice to do a fairly, we'll say, mindful, it's not vigorous, but engaged supine practice. I always believe vigorous is when you're starting to go out of breath. Okay, and then push your way up. Use your left foot flat. Just shift your hips back and then put the strap off to the side. Now, same setup with the bridge, but cross your left ankle over your right thigh for thread the needle. And you can actually do this pose just holding here and opening the knee out to the side, keeping the low back slightly lifted. The right foot could stay down, or you lift your heel And that alone, lifting the heel, creates more of an intense stretch for the outer hip. And then of course you can actually lift your foot, and where it's called thread the needle is you slide your left hand through the gap of your legs to hold the top of your shin, and you can interlace your fingers. Or you could keep the leg less bent and hold the back of your thigh, just up to you. I actually like the power that comes from holding the top of the shin. Holding the top of the shin, though, it makes it more difficult to keep my low back slightly lifted from the floor. So just noticing that here, if I go hands to the back of the thigh, then I can keep the low back in a neutral position and then just gently nudge the left knee out to the side with the left elbow. You can flex your left foot to keep the leg more protected, in the sense that everything from the toes, ankle, knee stay fairly fixed, and then it's just a rotation in your hip that's creating the stretch. Okay, switch to the other side. So cross your right ankle over and then pause here. This is my less flexible side, and it's the side where I've got the microphone set in, so that's limiting me a little bit as well. So I feel a pretty good stretch here. I can sometimes just stay in this position or hold my knee, and I'm quite happy. Just depends on the time of day, if it's the morning especially. Then option, of course, to go further. And you could also slide your right hand in between the gap of your legs to hold the top of the shin, or just seeing the difference of my hand position, the back of the thigh. Again, flex your right foot, and it tends to be, you can actually get injured in both legs. And in this case, if one hip is less flexible, what ends up happening in a pose like this is your knee takes the brunt of the stretch, and there's very few practices where we encourage opening of the knees. We want to keep that area stable. Conversely, though, there are poses where it's the flexible leg that is more vulnerable, just because it can go further into a pose. So it's just something, unfortunately, we learn through trial and error within ourselves, because we're all shaped differently, which is great, because we don't want to be the same. Except for twins, they're kind of stuck. Okay, and then release your foot. And now actual bridge. So this is where I encourage, if you want to use a block, to push down with your feet and lift your hips up for bridge. Where you could use a block is, of course, you can slide it underneath you and then rest there. So it's a back bend, but not so intense. And you can literally let your hips be heavy, lift your chest, lift your chin, and breathe. And then the nice thing with most yoga blocks is they're not cubes. So cubes would mean that there'd only be one height setting, so they're rectangular shaped, and there's usually 3 height settings. So you could test whether you'd prefer to go to your second height setting. If you have one of the thinner blocks, this is a height setting that's actually not very stable. And then the final setting is the least stable, usually in all blocks. So just be mindful that you have to still be fairly engaged and also have the capacity to go and lift to that flexibility. So this is something in a power yoga class I would be like, oh yeah, no problem, this feels great. Just because we haven't done a lot of back bends, it might not feel the best. So I might actually just stick to that lowest setting in this supine is fine practice. Because a lot of times when I'm working poses on my back, I don't want to work that hard. Okay, and then remove the block off to the side. Keep your right foot as it is, and then bring your left knee in again. We did this earlier, except now hold onto your foot. And you can hold with just the left hand, and this is called half happy baby pose. And the more intense version of it, up to you. We'll only do it one time compared to when we did those poses at the beginning. So option one is to keep the right leg bent like I'm doing, or to extend your leg straighter. And just notice that when I go with a straighter leg, it makes it a lot more intense. So I'm happy to just stay here and then pull on the foot to bring the knee closer to the floor outside. It's not quite the shoulder, but kind of like mid-rib cage on the left side body. And then as you pull down with your foot, push up against the resistance of your hands. And that equal and opposite reaction can create a nice stretch, but also strength simultaneously. Okay, and then release your foot and switch sides. So hold on to your right foot, pull the knee in. Again, option if you want to slide the leg straighter. I'm more than happy to just stay here, pulling down and pushing up. And sometimes I switch to both hands, and I'll even like roll side to side on this one as I push the foot up and down. So there isn't a specific way you have to do the pose, and it's great to explore and just get into different stretches within the muscles. Okay, and then release your legs, just pause. That's set up for bridge, but we're not doing bridge, we're just waiting there. And then now doubling up the leg, so happy baby pose, holding on to the outside of your feet with your arms to the inside. This is technically like the most classic version of the pose. Where it's difficult for me is keeping a neutral spine. So of course the low back is rounding quite a bit. That does just happen in the pose like you would in crow or in a squat position. If you need a little bit extra length, you can hold onto your big toes with your peace fingers. And then there's always ways to modify further, and that could be holding the backs of your thighs and just allowing your knees to move away from you a bit. And this is the position right here where I can get my low back lifted, and I'm about, 5 or 6 centimeters from being able to hold onto my big toes. Oh, I can just about do that. But I could hold the backs of the thighs and just push the legs straighter from there, and that's pretty challenging. And opening the knees wide. Okay, and then bend your knees, release your feet if you're holding them, lower your feet, and move your hips a little bit to the left and drop your knees to the right, stacking the legs on top of each other. Just be mindful of the block and strap. Reach your left arm out to the side, look over your left shoulder for a reclined twist. And then bring your knees up. Move your hips to the right and drop your knees to the left. Look over your right shoulder. You can use that left hand gently nudging your right thigh onto your left leg at the same time as doing your best to keep your right shoulder fixed to the floor. Okay, and then push your way up. Just shift your hips so that they're in line with your shoulders, and then pull your knees in, curl up, forehead towards your shins. Just recline, child's pose. And then one last breath in, and sigh it out as you uncurl into Shavasana position. And here in Shavasana, allow your arms to just rest alongside your body. Open your feet wide and drop your toes to the sides. The most classic of all supine positions is just lying on your back in final resting position. And pay particular attention to the heaviness. Allow the back of your head to be heavy. the back of your arms, your hands, your shoulders, your upper back, the back of the pelvis, the glutes, your calf muscles, and your heels. This is a great position to just rest for however much longer you would like. So I'll leave you here, especially if you've gotten comfortable on a bolster or with blankets. Namaste.